Thanks for coming, everybody, to the discussion today. I appreciate it. There's one thing about lean that I absolutely love, and it's the fact that it forces you to be an innovator. It forces you to think outside the box, and it really has you keep moving forward, never be satisfied with what you have. The other thing it does is it encourages you to share your journey, so that's what we're here doing today. In the spirit of lean, we've taken our discussion and put it on an A3 card, because like Billy Taylor said earlier this morning, if you can't talk about it in 10 seconds or you can't fit it on one piece of paper, then two things. Either you don't know it good enough or your solution is just way too complex. So I've got the easiest job today. I'm really just setting the table and the stage for two really excellent speakers, and Carol Tschirpke, who she's too humble to tell you, but she's an innovator and pioneer in physical therapy and now wellness. And Bruce Watkins, our general manager, who's probably the biggest cheerleader and supporter of ESI in our whole facility. So let me just give you a little background on myself. My name's Chris King. I'm an environmental health and safety manager. I now come with a side of wellness that's been developing over the last few years. I've been in health and safety for about 15 years. I've always kind of been considered an outsider because I didn't come up through the ranks in the normal way as an industrial hygienist or a process safety engineer or environmental engineer. I started my life off in sports medicine, where I was an athletic trainer at Holy Cross College, and then I went over to work at Phelan Rehab Hospital, where I worked for the physical therapy department. And 9 out of 10 of the patients that I saw and treated every day fit into two categories, and that was orthopedic and musculoskeletal disease or disorders, or MSDs. So it's really given me a unique view of workers' comp and the way that MSDs actually affect people and the companies that they work for. So to clarify the problem statement, why did we pick MSDs to target and go after? It's really a pretty simple story. Oops. If I could get this working, it'd be a simple story. So 3 quick questions. What industries do MSDs affect? And you can see most of us here in manufacturing, sprinkled in with a little healthcare. But as you can see from this graph, that we're really just the middle of the road or the bottom of the problem. There are tons of other industries that MSDs really affect negatively, and there's some of them that you'd never believe, like hospitality and hotel stuff, construction, warehousing, things like that. The next question would be, what physical things are we talking about when we talk about MSDs? And you can see from this graph, it's kind of a popsicle headache, but from head to toe, you're talking cervical issues, thoracic, lumbar sacral, foot problems, shoulders, carpal tunnel, and everything in between. So it's a really, really wide category with tons of different things and challenges in there. The third question, what's the financial impact? Why are we doing this? There has to be some kind of bottom line or dollar to it. And I pulled some statistics earlier today, and I try to get my stats from 3 places, from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the Center for Disease Control, and Dr. Glenn Pransky from Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. He's great. So just to put a little perspective in it, last year 650,000 MSD-related claims were filed in workers' comp. 1 out of every $3 spent in workers' comp was for an MSD-related issue. The total cost of MSDs, that's the medical side of things, and also lost wages, approached $850 billion. 51% of every adult over the age of 50 is diagnosed with a chronic MSD-related issue, and that's twice the rate of heart disease and respiratory issues. Low back pain alone. On that last graph, that was only 19% of the whole pie, but low back pain alone, 314 million bed days. And it's scary enough that there are still physicians out there that will have people do bed rest for low back things, but it's still out there. 187 million lost work days, and 80% of all workers' comp claims are MSD related. So you can see it's a real problem. The next thing I've got is just some questions that we've asked hundreds of people over the last couple years. So we don't have time for a full discussion today, but I figured I would just throw out the questions and also give you the answers. But if we had no barriers whatsoever, actually, what gets in the way of optimizing our workforce? What are the barriers? What are the problems that get in our way? And we talk about optimizing the workforce, and it's really comes down to, do you people go to work every day, and are they 100% proactive and engaged in their job? So what are the things that get in the way? Increasing healthcare costs and workers' comp is always at the top of the list. That's a category alone that has had companies moving offshore for 2 decades. Aging workforce, that's always an issue. We know, just like in our place, you know, some of our best performers are people that fit in that aging workforce. And, you know, the good part about it is retirement is getting so far out there that we're getting these people longer, but we also know that the longer we have them, the more medical costs that are engaged in those older work people. Then there's things like retention, engagement, productivity, presenteeism. We only used to have to worry about absenteeism, but now there's this thing out there, presenteeism, and that really has to do with, you know, the people are coming to work, great, but what kind of condition are they in? Are they at 50% of their total capacity or 100%? So we also have to look at some of the things that historically haven't worked. What's out there that hasn't worked? And you can see from this graph, you know, the normal canned wellness programs out there, and this is some statistics from, you know, the nation's best wellness programs. And you can see from the stats, I mean, it's only moving the metrics between 2% and 30%. So if I was the person writing the check for that, you know, I'd want a refund. There's also other things out there like the safety incentive programs. You really can't buy safety, or you can't buy good behavior. On-site therapy solutions is another thing. Proactive injury management is on every physical therapy's website. And if you think about that, the way it's presented, you know, proactive injury management. How proactive can you be if there's already an injury out there and it already happened? So it's kind of flawed right there. Allowing employees to navigate the healthcare system and the workers' comp system alone. In some states, that's a disaster. And another thing that Billy Taylor said this morning is building KPIs or goals on lagging indicators. I mean, nobody reads the paper, the Sunday paper on Thursday, yet we create all of our goals and our expectations around lagging indicators. So if we just threw all of those obstacles out the window and started fresh, you know, what would a good program look like? And the first one, you know, that everybody always comes up with is to be truly proactive, to be ahead of the problem instead of walking behind the elephant picking up the problem. That would be great. To be interactive and responsive to all employees at the right time or just in time would be fantastic. It's great if you have a program, but if it's not at the time when the person needs it, it's really not that good. To build a trusted and safe environment where people can get help without any red tape or problems, just an easy way to get the solution done. Not to be burdened with causality, paperwork, and all the other legal stuff in the disability system. To eliminate or reduce lost time or transitional duty days would be fantastic. And this one that always is kind of a utopic kind of look, but if the service was on-site, efficient, free to the employee, and based in wellness, you know, that would be great, but we actually have something out there now like that. And the last one for the people who are in charge of the finances and the bean counters in the room is a rapid ROI. And that's something that you can see from here. This is Carol's first company that she ever worked with back in 2009. You can see some dramatic results, and Bruce is going to share some of those with you as well. You know, but it really makes sense to look into this. I had an aha moment many years ago, and it really came down to, you know, people don't leave their problems in the car. You don't drive to work, take your low back pain, throw it in the back of the car, go in, punch in, and be a productive and engaged employee. It just doesn't happen. You know, we walk by these leading indicators every day. You know, if there was a machine out on the floor, like Billy Taylor was saying, you know, earlier this morning, you know, a red flag goes up. And if a red flag goes up on a machine, you know, engineers drop out of the sky like a SWAT team, and they're on that machine, they're trying to fix it. But we walk by people every day that are waving little tiny red flags that they have problems with, but we walk right by them, unfortunately. So what are some of those symptoms, or what are some of those leading indicators we should be looking at versus the lagging indicators? And it's real simple stuff, you know, muscle sprains and strains, tight, sore muscles, your body doesn't rebound the way it used to, aches and pains, bad sleep patterns. All those things are leading indicators of musculoskeletal disorders. So I'm going to turn this over now to Carol Tschirpke, who is really going to talk about the countermeasures for this. And it's a really unique program that I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
My name is Carol Tschirpke, and I just wanted to share with you kind of the accidental beginning of the ESI Wellness Program, because we had been a physical therapy practice for 26 years and had a clinic that had a 2 to 3 month waiting list, and never dreamt of getting into this kind of business until we got a phone call about 6 years ago, 2008, and a small fiber optic company on its lean journey was experiencing all the things that Chris just spoke of. I mean, their workforce was systematically breaking down, very skilled, but aging. And what happened was we thought, oh, we don't have time to do a wellness program or go on site. But at the same time, something else was happening. We, as a clinic, were trying to decide whether or not to continue to accept workman's comp. And workman's comp is just a very complex system when you're a provider. So we sat down and said, geez, what would be ideal? We have patients that come in, but we're not allowed to look at the whole picture. We have to focus on a very, very specific part of what's going on. Someone comes to you with carpal tunnel, you can't look at their elbow or their shoulder. You have to look at the carpal tunnel, okay? And we witnessed workers who just were lost in the system. The system is very adversarial. The worker, once they were out, really didn't have kind feelings for the company or their OC health doctors. So there was it was very dysfunctional. There was no communication or not very good communication between the healthcare worker, the company, the insurance, and the employee. It just was not working very well. So we sat down and said, what would be ideal? You know, wouldn't it be great if we could see this patient before their second shoulder surgery? You know, before their first shoulder surgery would be even more ideal. You know, couldn't we see this person before they had their back fusion and before they were addicted to pain meds? So we thought, you know what, maybe this is the perfect storm. Maybe kind of our unique approach on how we look at the musculoskeletal system, and it's a trademark approach called BioSynchronistics. Maybe this opportunity is a way for us to merge our non-traditional approach with the needs of this particular company. So I'm going to just share real quick with you how what we do is different. So if you go to the doctor and you have back pain, okay, what does the doctor look at? Your back, right? Absolutely, that's all they focus on. And if I have my little pointer here, that's pretty much it. If you see a physician complain of back pain, if you see a chiropractor, if you see a traditional physical therapist, this is what they're going to look at. But for any of you who are engineers, there's a whole lot more going on than this person's back issue, okay? I mean, you can literally see this line right here. You can see how many torques and twists, and you can see the center line that's coming from his head should actually fall between his 2 feet. So if this was a machine, and you weren't looking at a body, if this was a machine, you could think that this machine wasn't functioning all that well because things were very off-kilter. They weren't balanced properly. In an ideal situation, this is how we should function. And we talk a lot about lean and waste, but for the human body, for motion, motion is best performed when things are balanced. The muscles function better, everything functions better. So ideally, a line should go right through the ear, the shoulder, down through the foot. But most of your workforce is more like that tree, okay? You can see how much force is holding that tree from falling forward. It's the very same thing with the worker on the right. If you can picture that worker as a tree and think of what's keeping him from falling forward. Any ideas on what's keeping this guy from falling forward?
Muscles in his back.
Exactly. Muscles in his back. In his back, his buttock, and the back of his legs. That's his normal standing position. So now take this worker and load 40-pound box in front of him. When he lifts that box and engages those muscles, is he more susceptible to an injury? Of course. Okay? So this is kind of what we do, and I'm going to show you just a quick, hopefully. Early Symptom Intervention Wellness, or ESI Wellness, uses an approach called BioSynchronistics. It is based on our knowledge of the body as physical therapists and occupational therapists, and it's rooted in the laws of physics. We look at gravity's effect on the bones and muscles, or our system of levers and pulleys, and we look at key indicators such as the symmetry of the hips, tops of the pelvis, and of the shoulder blades. If these are imbalanced, undue stress is placed on the postural muscles, often resulting in sprains and strains when performing lifting or repetitive activities. To better understand this approach, look at this tower. Each block supports the one above it. Now, if a supporting block becomes imbalanced, the entire tower has to reshift or it will fall. This predictable pattern is found in the body as well, since it's like the tower, having to deal with the effects of gravity on a small base of support. The ESI clinician performs a systems analysis, looking for the key indicators, as well as using their skilled hands to feel the twists and torsions of the skeleton. The clinician uses light touch in very specific leverage areas to rebalance the entire musculoskeletal system, which takes the stress and mechanical strain off of the symptomatic areas. There is no manipulation, no equipment, and the sessions are painless. No matter where the painful symptoms are, addressing the entire musculoskeletal system in this way is both efficient and wellness-based and has unsurpassed documented success. So this is all great in theory, but as clinicians, we had no idea if this was going to work. In a manufacturing setting, we had 22 years of data that said, yes, we had people flying in from all over to come to our clinic, but we had no idea if it was going to work. So we started a small pilot, and what happened, and this was in 2008, what happened from that pilot was it not only worked well, but the results came from employee to employee, and they were dramatic and reproducible. And Bruce will be speaking a little bit later on those results. But it spread from employee to employee and company to company. And in a short period of time now, we're in different types of settings, in different types of industries, such as Northeast Utilities, who does Yankee Gas and NSTAR. We're in facilities, departments of colleges and universities, such as Holy Cross College, Wellesley College. We're in companies that supply material for the military, and we're in Carl STORZ, who is with me today. So pretty impressive and dramatic differences with all these different things. The other thing is that typical wellness types of programs boast if they can get 40 to 50% participation rate, and those are the people who already feel good. I mean, most people who sign up for typical wellness programs want to see how well they're doing, and they're already on that journey. But that 20% of the employees that are costing you 80% of your health care and workman's comp dollar really don't go anywhere close to those wellness programs. Those are the people that ESI Wellness really affects. So it really makes quite an impact on your bottom line. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce Watkins, who's General Manager, Carl STORZ.
So one of the questions I have for you is, what's the value of human life? You know, if you are a material scientist, you'd say $160. Is that really the value of human life? You know, if you're an actuarial guy with the federal government that's trying to determine what the death benefit is for someone, you'd say, well, it's obvious, it's $3.2 million. Oh, by the way, if you make a little bit less towards minimum wage, it's 1.8. And, you know, if you make a little bit more, we'll go as high as 6.8 million. But if you asked my mother, this week is the 2nd anniversary of her death, She died of lung cancer. It was small cell carcinoma. She was diagnosed in May of that year. And the doctor said that she had a 5% survival rate for a 5-year survival rate. She was 78 years old. She wanted to live to her 80th birthday. She lasted 4 months. During that 4 months and the time that I spent with her, what do you think she thought the value of life was? Priceless. Absolutely. You know, it's in that venue that our company, Karl Storz Endoscopy, builds devices that save lives and improve lives. So the messaging that we have is this notion, it's a lot of words, but it's benefit humanity by advancing medical technology through innovation and education. Our focus is on minimally invasive surgery. And so I'll tell you a story about how we do that even from a goodwill standpoint outside the company. We had a gentleman by the name of Dr. Murphy who joined us just a couple of weeks ago. He's retired from his practice in New Jersey. He went to Ghana. He worked in the northern part of Ghana. He will tell you that the southern part of Ghana is where the rich Ghanaians live, and the northern part is still relatively poor. He used some of our products that we gifted to him to do some dramatic work to save the lives of these very, very poor children who in a number of cases had ingested bolts, seeds, anything they can put in their mouth as a child. But it's in that spirit of gifting to him to benefit humanity are the greater things we do over and above just selling hospitals and physicians our product. So if we have that attention outside the company, shouldn't we have that same care and attention to the 600 people that we're entrusted with? If you look at the kind of work we do, people who come to our facility generally expect to see highly automated equipment and processes. So the work that I did when I worked before this for 23 years for Kodak, really expensive stuff. High-speed equipment, $500 million, all kinds of automation going on. When you come to this facility, the machine is the human. And you look at the work that we do in terms of microassembly, and trust me, when you have a device that's going in one of the natural orifices of your body, you hope that we can make that thing as small as possible. So typical kind of work is bench work at a microscope all day long. So body posture is critically important. And so when I joined this company 7 years ago, as Carol mentioned, it surprised me the number of hours we worked and the number of hours of overtime that we worked and the conditions with which we did that with people who were breaking down physically. And so we did a lot of things. You know, certainly we worked on, you know, chairs and benches, and I know we don't have benches all over the place with the adjustability, but ergonomic microscopes, we did all of those things. We implemented stretching. But the one thing that we really then focused on was working with Carol with this early symptom intervention. And so again, relative to the scale, I want to give you a sense of what folks are working with. So here as an example is a lens stack assembly, 0.5 millimeters in diameter. When you look at this under a microscope, for those of us who are not trained in this operation, it looks like a droplet of water. And so it's in that intense focus and precision that folks are working all day long. So, you know, you talk about the dollars and cents of these things, and I will talk about the cost of the program. I'll talk about the benefits, but I want to talk about it from a personal perspective. So when Chris's predecessor came, so we didn't even have an environmental health and safety person in the company when I joined the company. So we brought that position on board, and then ultimately Chris joined in the environmental health and safety management position. And so they came to me with this idea of this program to pitch it to me. And we're talking about over $200,000 for something I knew nothing about. And I said, you know what? Why don't we start small? Let's run a pilot, and let's see what the results are. But then when I started to think about this, let me put this in perspective for you. $200,000 is a lot of money for us to invest in a program with some untested benefits. But at the same time, when you look at the family health care cost of a medical plan for our employees, it's over $22,000 a year. It's over $22,000 a year. And we as a company pay between 80 to 90% of those premiums. So we're already invested in what is mostly a reactive health care process and investing in excess of $10 million in that program. From that perspective, spending $200,000 on this program seems like a pretty good bet. And when you look at it on a per-person basis, it's an average of about $350 per person per year. So what has this program done for us? Injuries. When I joined the company 7 years ago, pretty much 13 musculoskeletal injuries of some kind, repetitive trauma, back, et cetera, et cetera. Today, 1. 13 to 1 reduction from an injury standpoint. Injury severity, if you look at the days away and restricted, which those of you who are in the safety profession, you kind of get those numbers, it's the same kind of reduction. It's a 10 to 1 reduction in those days that are affected, which affect the productivity and the performance of not only the company, but also the employee. This, for me, is the most important benefit of this program. It's the employee goodwill. So think about a single mother with 2 children making $15, $17, $20 an hour and having to take time off from work for a pain that's bothering her when she has all of these pressures of work and family. She's probably, in most cases, in my experience, not going to take that time until it gets to the point where she can no longer fulfill the essential job functions of her job. And by then, it's too late, it's incredibly expensive, it's workman's comp, and it's all kinds of physical therapy, and potentially, in some cases, it's an invasive surgical procedure. And so what we've done with this program is the program is on site at our facility. It's offered free of charge to every employee, whether it's work-related or you're a weekend warrior, non-work related. It's available to anyone, and it's available for any reason. And so being at work on company time, the barrier to getting into that program and into that treatment is very, very low. If it's an emergency situation, oftentimes Carol and her staff will stay late to see someone on a same-day basis. So that was, we deployed this in operations. I think 6 months to a year later, we then deployed it in the logistics group. When we announced that at the all-employee meeting in the logistics group, John, you'll probably remember, we had a round of applause from the employees. One of the first times, I wouldn't say the first time, but one of the first times in that recent memory when folks said, you know, we're really doing a program that's really all about respecting the individual. Workman's comp claims. So a typical workman's comp claim for one of these injuries for us would start at $12,000 for the claim, and it can go well north of $20,000, and it could go into hundreds of thousands depending on how protracted, but typically $12,000 to $20,000. Today, a typical workman's comp claim for us is about $1,500, right? About $1,500. So you're seeing this repeat multiplier, 10 to 1 reduction, 10 to 1 reduction, 10 to 1 reduction. And the last one is our workman's comp insurance premiums in the state of Massachusetts. We use AIM. And as part of AIM, we are now on the highest discount level for the premiums that we pay for that workman's comp coverage. So when you look at this from the primary purpose, which is injuries, to the goodwill that we are generating, to the results in terms of workman's comp claim, it's really been an incredibly successful program. and just one piece, really, of the overall lean journey that we've been on over the last 6 years. So what I would mention is, how does that rack and stack for me? So some of you know that I'm a marathon runner. The reason I train for long distances is because when I hit kind of middle age at 40, I knew what my destiny was. My family history is a history of heart disease. My mother had a heart attack at 37. Her father died at 69. And I knew if I didn't change my lifestyle that that was my destiny. So I started running. And so the way I kept running was to set a goal of qualifying for the Boston Marathon. I did that, and then I wanted to qualify for the next one, and so forth. Well, along the way, I have 3 children that I'm incredibly proud of that are grown now. And so we were out water skiing one day, and Dad decided that he was going to be 25 years old, just like my children. And the result of that looked something like this, with serious injury to my hip and my shoulder, physical therapy, rest, all that stuff, you know, on and on and on. And I could not get back to a point where I could train competitively, and I could not run competitively for sure without pain. So my executive assistant says one day, well, you know, Bruce, you got the CSI program thing. Why don't you go down and see Cheryl? And I'm like, yeah, you know, so here I am, right? The guy who's sponsoring the program going, yeah, right, whatever, it's not going to help me. So I go down, and it took me probably close to a year working with Cheryl. And I can tell you that I finally was able then, that was 4 years ago. Last year was the first time in 2 years off that I requalified for Boston, and I'm back on that path, and I'm running pain-free. And it's amazing that I did all of that other stuff and didn't help until I worked with Cheryl to help me get to the root cause, really, of what was going on musculoskeletal for me. So I'm a real big believer and a real big champion of the program. So I want to wrap this up and end kind of where I started. You know, our focus really, as you learned over these couple of days, is the idea that lean is about a management philosophy. It starts with respect for people. It focuses on waste elimination and really focuses you on the idea of invoking principles, that you may use some tools and some systems, but it's really about the principles, and it starts with people. And we don't get it right every day, but clearly what I will tell you is we have positive intent. And so our workforce is a workforce that is comprised of over 20 different ethnicities from around the world, first generation, speaking many different languages. Our company headquarters is in Tuttlingen, Germany. And so what I want to share with you is a piece that just reflects the people that work within our community that I'm very proud of.
Okay, and we currently do 3 or 4 rollouts every 4 or 5 months. So the process is we go into a company. It's a voluntary program. That's really important. And we basically do a rollout to usually the toughest department in a company and see what type of engagement we're getting. Currently, we're rolling through different parts of Northeast Utility, and there'll be usually between 40 and 50% of the employees sign up right at the rollout. Once you get into 2 to 3 weeks into the program, it starts to catch fire. And I think it's all based on results, not promises. And I think that's what really feeds this type of program. Thank you very much.